Story time about the time a nail salon took advantage of my blindness. My sister and I got our nails done. We used to go all the time, and while the lady was doing my nails, she asked me how I knew how much money I had. At the time, I used cash, never again after this, but I told her that I folded my bills a certain way. I told her that I folded my 20s different than my 10s, different than my 5s, different than my 1s. Anything of her asking that question, I think it's a good question, and I just thought she was curious. I got done with my nails, she walked me towards the front, and my sister was actually just finishing up with hers, so it was perfect. There's another man at the front, and he asked me how I knew how much money I had. I told him the same thing. Before I left to go to the nail salon, I made sure exactly how much money I had. My sister helped me count it, helped me make sure that I folded the right bills, just so I knew how much I had, how much I would spend. I gave her the money, positive that I gave her the right amount because it was just folded, it was folded perfectly, and I counted it out. She takes it, starts talking in a different language, and then tells me that I owe her $20 more. Or I didn't, and I told her the exact amount I gave her, and she's like, no, you didn't give me this amount, you gave me that amount. Like for part two. Part two, the time a nail salon took advantage of my blindness. We go back and forth a few times. I'm positive that I gave her the right amount, really counting it back to her, and she's like, no, 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 you're wrong. And at this point, more people are walking into the salon, so I'm getting really uncomfortable. Back at it, I should have pulled out my phone that has a money reader on it and read her the money using my screen reader, but I was super uncomfortable and more people were walking in, and I just wanted to leave it at that. My sister was paying somewhere else. I had no idea where she was, and I didn't want to call out to her or anything. So when we got home, I wanted to double check that these people were actually scamming me. My sister helped me look at the money, and aside from the amount I paid for my nails, obviously in the tip, I was missing $20. We can learn something from most situations, and this situation just taught me to not carry around cash. I never went to that nail salon again. I actually got my nails somewhere else today, and I think they look pretty good. I mean, I can't see them, but let me know.
Story time. My boyfriend wouldn't let me break up with him, so I cheated on him with his best friend. So we're gonna call my boyfriend Jay and his best friend Mike. Well, I met these two boys through my best friend, and I really liked Mike. Mike and I would talk all the time. We would FaceTime 24/7, but whenever the subject of dating came up, he said that he couldn't because his best friend really liked me. So he was trying to set me up with Jay, but not really because he really liked me. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I'll date Jay for a little bit and then I'll break up with him. Worst mistake of my fucking life. Every time I would try to break up with this kid, he would be like, I'm gonna kill myself now. And he would send me videos with him holding up a knife to his neck, cutting his arms whenever I would say we're breaking up. So pretty much I was forced into that relationship. He was manipulative as fuck. It was just not a good situation. Well, the one day Jay was like, oh, do you want to come over Mike's house with me? And of course I said yeah, because I literally was still in love with Mike, his best friend. And my parents were super strict, so I had to sneak over there, like for part two. Part two of how my boyfriend wouldn't let me break up with him, so I cheated on him with his best friend. For the new people, Mike is the best friend and Jay is the guy who I was dating. Anyway, so we get to Mike's house, right? And we're all hanging out, and I was giving Mike a little bit more attention than I was giving Jay. Because obviously, I wasn't interested in Jay. So Jay decided to act like he was pissed off at me, right? And he walks out of the house, right? To see if I would chase after him. Like, obviously I'm not going to. So Mike and I are sitting there watching him walk down the street because he said he was going home. So Mike and I were sitting on the couch and we started making out. And then we heard the fucking front door open. And Jay's like, I can't believe you didn't come and talk to me after that, blah, blah, blah. What is this relationship? So then Mike steps in and he's like, yo, you need to drop her. She just tried to make out with me, blah, blah, blah. And I sat there and I was like, yeah, it's true. So Jay starts bawling his eyes out and goes to the fucking kitchen to grab a knife. So after that, Mike called the cops on him, and Mike and I are finally dating now.
Y'all, please! I will never hang out with a white boy again. This white boy came to pick me up. You know, I was trying to get that little diddly dick. And as soon as we get into the car, he's smiling at first, and then he starts looking at me weird. I'm just like, okay, whatever. So we drive to his house. His mom is... I'm not gonna be able to get through this. His mom is there and she looks fucking terrified when she looks at me. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm probably the first bad bitch that he brought to this house. I'm sorry. So we go into his room. You know, we're just chilling, watching a movie, whatever. And then his mom pulls him out of the room. When he comes back, he asks me, do you need to go to the hospital? I'm like, no. Why the fuck would I need to go to the hospital? He looks at me. He's like, oh, me and my mom noticed that your scalp is peeling off. It was my fucking lace. My fucking lace friend. So I'm like, what? And I run into the bathroom and I'm looking in the mirror. I look in the mirror and I see a whole part of my lace is lifted up. Once I told him it was my hair, he got mad and called me a catfish. He made me Uber myself.
Story time about how a guy bothered me then got into a car accident. So basically I was just sitting in my car waiting for my food to get ready with my brother when I see a guy pull up with this car backing up to park in front of me. He backed up so fast where he almost hit my car. So me and my brother honked at him and we're like, yo, like, watch out, you're about to hit the car. And he gets out of the car and he's like, I have eyes, I can see. Like, okay, you have eyes, but clearly you can't use them. So he goes inside the store to pick up his cake, and my brother goes inside to pick up our food. And by the time he comes back out, my brother's not back out yet. And I wanted to honk at him and be like, next time watch what you say. But he left, and then my brother came out right when he left, and he was at the light. And I was like, listen, we're gonna go catch this guy, and I'm gonna like beat him up. I mean, I really couldn't beat him up, but I just wanted to follow him, like give him the finger or whatever. So I'm driving and I feel like I lost him and I didn't find him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And then I found him. I saw his car and I went after him, but like for part 2.
Okay, this is part 2 of my teacher almost getting fired. After that whole incident, my class was dead silent for the rest of the period. We then all went to lunch. None of us really talked about it, but then all of a sudden a woman came up to us. We were all kind of sitting around the same table. This woman, I guess she was administration. I have no idea who she was. I think what had happened was a bunch of students had reported him. She asked us all from Mr. W's class to follow her. I don't remember if this was the same day or the following day, but she asked us to follow her into an empty classroom. I think it was used for testing. She had us all sit around the table and recount the incident to the best of our ability. Summer was there. What she wanted to know was basically, did Mr. W throw that binder at Summer? And we all recounted it basically the same, but at the end of the day, we all said yes. But eventually they let us all go. The following day, Mr. W was really sad. Barely spoke to us, barely did anything. He was passing out some work. He looked at Summer and said, Summer, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw that binder at you. His voice sounded like he was about to break. But we did have him as our teacher for the rest of the year, so no, he wasn't actually fired. But I do think Summer was terrified to speak up for the rest of that year. And the rest of us kind of didn't want to be in that class anymore. Yeah.
I am going to be telling you a scary childhood story. When I was 2 years old, my mom passed away. My dad wasn't in the picture, so I went to go live with my grandparents. My grandparents lived in a super old home that was built in the 1800s. I was a very imaginative child. So when I told my grandparents that I used to see people in the house, they just didn't believe me. There was one lady in particular that I would always see. She would sit at the end of my bed and watch me fall asleep. I wasn't scared of her because I thought she was an actual person. Plus, I was super little, so nothing even crossed my mind. At this point, I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember her talking to me constantly. She even sang me the song Rockabye Baby to get me to go to bed one night. Every single day when I would get home, I could see her in my window. At that point, I thought she was just waiting for me. She just wanted to be my friend, right? But as I got older, things started to get really weird between me and her. She wasn't this nice lady anymore. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of the lady in my room who would sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. No one else in my family could see her. She even told me that she was my mom. I really believed her. If you remember, my mom passed away when I was 2. So, I mean, it seemed pretty real that it was my mom. I didn't really remember what my mom's face looked like when she passed away. And this lady, could be my mom. She continued to sing me lullabies every single night when I would go to bed. She would always be waiting for me in the window when I would get home from school. But I figured out pretty quickly it wasn't my mom. My mom was a sweet, kind-hearted person. This spirit was evil. She would get mad at me every single time any of my friends would come over. She told me she could see my future and that I was going to go to hell after I died in a car accident. It scared me so much, but no one believed me. It got to the point where I never even wanted to go in the car because I thought I was going to die. She convinced me I was evil. Stay tuned for part 3 that's coming tonight. This is part 3 of the lady who used to sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. This spirit was evil, and she started to convince me that I was evil too. She convinced me that I would go to hell because I was a horrible child, even though I wasn't. She convinced me that every single person in my life hated me. She even started to control my dreams, and I would wake up every single night screaming at the top of my lungs from a night terror, and she would be sitting at the end of my bed. This went on for years. When I turned 9, my grandpa passed away. And because it was a really big house, me and my grandma moved to a different house. And the evil spirit was just gone. I never saw her again. But was she really gone? When I was 15, I went to a psychic. The moment I walked into the room, she could feel a dark energy enter the room. She told me that someone was following me every single step I took. And when she said that, I knew exactly what she was talking about. After that, I went to a medium, and after many sessions with her, the dark presence was finally gone.
This client hasn't been able to get her nails done in over 3 months. She recently went through something traumatic and she let me share her story. So she was dating this guy for 5 years when they decided to get married. He
He was an accountant and had a business. My client noticed that he would buy expensive things like designer shoes and cars, but when she tried questioning it, he would just say that his business was doing well. Soon after the wedding, she found out he'd been cheating on her for years, so she packed all of her stuff and left. When trying to withdraw money one day, she found out he cleared out her savings, money that she spent years working for. Turns out he was never actually an accountant. He never even graduated college. To make matters worse, she lost her job due to COVID within that same period. Over the past few months, she had to find a new job, a new place to live, and a way to cope with all of this. She said doing her nails brightens up her day and gets her mind off of this craziness.
Story time! So yesterday my friends and I all went to the fair and there were 6 of us in total. And none of us wanted to have to worry about driving there and parking, so we just Ubered instead. So we left the fair around 11:15 and we walked to a nearby shopping center where the Uber picked us up about 10 minutes late. We ended up leaving at 11:30. We get in the Uber, the man says hello, and we head home the normal way. Everything's fine. And my parents don't like when I Uber, so they were tracking me on Life 360 from the moment I got in the car. After about 10 minutes in, I get a text from my mom and it said, "Where are you?" I look up from my phone and I realize I have no idea where we are, and Ubers know their directions, they know how to take you home. We were 20 Okay, back to the Uber story. Our parents are freaking out, we're texting each other in our group chat so he doesn't hear us. Also, while this was all happening, he wasn't talking to us, but he had an earbud in and he was talking to someone on the phone really quietly. It was super creepy. My mom starts calling me again and he hears the ring. And one of my friends pulled up on her phone the directions to get home, which he also heard, so he knew that we thought something was off. After a little while longer, we finally know where we are, so we feel a little bit better. We were getting really close to the turn that goes into my friend's neighborhood, and we were thinking, if he doesn't make this turn, we're screwed. Thank goodness he makes a turn and we're back at my friend's house. But the scary thing is what if he was planning something, but since our phones were ringing and we had the GPS up, that he changed his mind. Because we were not going home. I still can't stop thinking about it. This is the one time Life 360 has come in handy. We're all safe now.
Story time about one of the worst customers ever. I got a new job at a coffee shop downtown. It was my first day out of training and I would be taking orders and making drinks on my own. I was a little nervous, but excited and ready to be by myself. Everything was going great until this woman came in. She came up to the counter and immediately noticed that I was new there. She said, "I'm a regular and come in almost every day. Write my order down and save it so I don't have to explain it to you again next time." At first I thought she was joking, so I smiled and laughed, but then I quickly realized that she wasn't kidding. She proceeded to order a very complicated drink, which I didn't mind. I was up for the challenge. I made her drink and handed it to her with a smile. Without even trying it, she said the color was off and requested I remake it. When I turned around to try again, she said, "Don't mess it up this time. It's not rocket science." I remade the drink, and this time she picked it up and looked at it, didn't try it, and complained that I put too much caramel in it and asked if I was trying to make her fat. I remade the drink a 3rd time, doing everything she requested. This time she actually tried the drink and immediately spit it back into the cup. She then told me that I'm horrible at my job, called me incompetent and lazy, and of course asked to speak to my manager. It only got worse from here. Part 2 of the worst customer ever. After she requested to speak to the manager, I went to get the shift lead and explain the situation. He immediately knew what customer I was referring to. My manager went to speak to her as I remade her drink a 4th time. She demanded that the drink be free and that we also let her pick a food item on the house for wasting her time. When we refused, she went ballistic and started screaming that she would never come here again and that we lost a customer. She demanded that we get the owner of the store down here immediately and said that she wouldn't leave until the owner arrives. We told her that she would have to leave or we would call the cops. She continued screaming at us, took the drink without paying, and knocked over one of the displays on her way out. My manager said that this customer complained almost every day, told me I'm doing a good job, and thanked me for finally getting rid of a Karen. I couldn't believe my eyes when she came back a few days later. I was dreading having to take her order again. To my surprise, my manager confronted her about not paying the other day and knocking over our display. He then asked her to leave, but she went crazy again and refused to leave, and this time we did have to call the cops. Ultimately, she left before the police came and hasn't been back since.
I haven't been to the toilet in 4 days and it was starting to worry me, so I went to the doctor's. I arrived and the doctor felt my stomach and said it was very hard. He wanted me to take a stool sample, which means you have to shit in the cup. I had coffee for breakfast, so I was pretty much ready to go. I grabbed the cup and went to the toilet and held it up to my ass and started pushing. I didn't realize how badly coffee affected me, and the next thing you know, a strong gust of diarrhea started blasting out of my ass and I felt like a rocket ready for takeoff. I grabbed onto the door for balance because I started levitating and the cup was already full, but I couldn't stop. I was holding onto the door for dear life and the shit was spitting out like a shotgun. I eventually stopped and looked at the glass cup of my shit and there were cracks all over the glass. I heard the desk lady shouting for everyone to get under the